All right, the Hurricane Helene came up last night, and of course we heard the usual Cassandras out there whining into their weak tea about how these hurricanes are becoming more frequent and more powerful than they have ever been before. Is that true? Well, of course, you guys know me, so you know that I'm going to say that it's not true. But today I have backup. I have ClimateDepot.com founder, and if he doesn't know the answer to this question, then the answer is not known. Marc Morano from ClimateDepot.com. Hey, Marc. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Doing well. Thanks for having me on. And by the way, just one quick thing you mentioned. You're going to talk about AI later. From the climate context, AI is exposing the fraud of renewable energy to the point where BlackRock CEO Larry Fink has said, oh my gosh, we can't power AI with solar and wind because it's unreliable. And you also have Bill Gates buying nuclear power plants just to power AI. So the whole lie of solar and wind are being exposed. Now, AI's got a whole host of other problems and control and human replacing humans and being used by World Economic Forum and evil billionaires, separate issue. But in terms of AI's one bright spot, at least, in terms of not being misused, it's exposing the fraud of the green energy revolution.
I did not know that, but it makes sense. Okay, I'm going to confess. I have a ChatGPT account. And because someone told me, Mike, that problem that you've been having with trying to figure out the internet algorithm and get your network to be the number one network in America, if you ask ChatGPT how to do it, it might actually have an answer. You know what? It did. I asked it. He gave me a 12-page book report. He goes, do this. And I went like, well, okay, that makes really good sense. I think it's a tool, Marc. It's just like a hammer. It's like electricity. It's a tool. You can use it. And I think that, I hope you're giving a talk on ethics. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, the thing about it is a tool, but it's a tool that is most likely going to be controlled by big tech, Google, Apple, and they're going to use it to control us. And so on balance, at this point, it might be more negative than positive because of the potential for misuse. But the big thing is, even the Washington Post is admitting that because of the advent of AI, these are massive, power-hungry centers that are going to be needed to generate that, and it's going to gobble up our grid. Now, point where they're now openly talking about this thermostat controls. Colorado is doing it. Texas is doing it. Corporate government collusion between the utilities, and they're going to be controlling how you heat and air condition your home through the smart meters and the smart readers outside your house. And this is all being done because we haven't created enough power. And going into the future, especially if Kamala Harris wins, we are looking at massive energy rationing to the point where the LA Times is talking about planned blackouts in order to meet our climate goals and to face the reality. They're actually calling it power plants, virtual power plants, when they control your power at your house and control your thermostat, because it's saving so much power for the energy companies and the government that it's like having another power plant online by rationing your energy, something we never had to deal with and don't have to deal with, but only have to deal with because of net zero, because of hurricane fears like Hurricane Helene.
I had not heard that, and I keep wondering too, Marc, because Donald Trump keeps talking about we're going to need all the energy to run AI. AI is coming, and we're going to need the energy. Last night in the debate, J.D. Vance mentioned nuclear power. He didn't get any pushback. They were talking about green energy, and I thought Vance had a great answer. But let's get to the meat and taters of why I called you.
Yes.
Hurricanes are not, and I love having all the other conversation, but I want to keep it a little bit on the subject of the debate and on Hurricane Helene. Are hurricanes and hurricane seasons becoming stronger and more deadly than we've ever seen before in the history of the human race?
No, and depending on the time scale, there's either no trend or declining trends. Now, you can go back to the Civil War, you can go back to 1900, you can go to the 1940s, where the most powerful active hurricane season by far in the United States. We had a 13-year lull from 2005 to 2017. So I think it was 17, and with the longest period with no Category 3 or larger hurricane making U.S. landfall.
Right.
Even on every metric, if you and a guy named meteorologist Dr. Ryan Maui came up or uses what they call this ACE, accumulated cyclonic energy, which is another fancy word for global hurricanes. They're called cyclones in the West and the Pacific. I'm sorry, in like the Asian region. And so if you look at the total energy, and you can go back to at least 1970, there's either no change or declining change in their total activity power. In terms of landfalls or not. So what they do, and this happened last year with another hurricane, as a category, I think it was a Category 3 at landfall, and they said it was unprecedented. The U.S. government called it unprecedented. This was repeated by PBS. Turned out that what was unprecedented about the hurricane is 150-mile-an-hour stretch of beach in Florida had never had a Category 3 landfall, but it was literally no different. Out of like the last 47 hurricanes, there had been similar Category 3 landfalls. There was nothing unique about it other than that one patch of land. So they can spin these numbers and do this. Now, Hurricane Helene was a bad storm, one of the worst in U.S. history, but it was a Category 4 when it made landfall, caused all kinds of destruction. But the bottom line is it was a normal natural variation well within the bounds. Nothing unusual to see here. They will come up with every metric. There's unprecedented. There's nothing unprecedented about it. There's always, but here's the next key. They'll say this area has never had a hurricane. This is unprecedented. This particular city. Well, you have to look at everything as a total, because it's like if you go into a casino and you go to the slot machine, this particular person had never won any money at a slot. This is unprecedented. But overall, everyone's losing at slots. Same thing with a lottery. So that's how they do it. It's your chance of winning the lottery is very low. The chance of someone somewhere winning the lottery is very high. So they're going to hype those winners and claim that lottery winnings are going up. That's the exact same thing that they're using Hurricane Helene for, and that's exactly how the media use it. Now, in relation to hurricane, well, we can talk about the debate in a second, but anyway, that's the answer to your question. I wrote the book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Climate Change, and I go back 150 years, all the data on hurricanes. Nothing unusual is happening. In fact, they were far worse when carbon dioxide was lower in the atmosphere.
Okay, another meteorologist, Jamie Arnold, WMBF. I don't know if you saw this graph. Posted this on X.com yesterday. Please consider this post as educational and informative. In other words, these people that live, sleep, eat, and breathe climate science, you can't talk to these people. Or climate hysteria. You can't talk to these people. They're not interested in anything you have to say because they worship this God that is the earth, and that is the climate and the weather and what have you. So he knows who he's dealing with. He says the only intent with which it was posted, catastrophic inland flooding from faraway landfalling hurricanes is nothing new to the Appalachian Mountains. Tropical moisture forced up high terrain is the recipe for major and sometimes historic landfalls or rainfall. And then he lists Hurricane Camille, 1989, shows the course that it took. And yes, it went right over Tennessee and then the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. The Great Flood of 1916, which hit exactly where Hurricane Helene hit, those areas right there in that corner, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee right there. Hurricane Agnes, 1972, and then Hurricane Helene. So there are 4 instances here, 3 others than Helene, where inland rainfall has occurred and flooding has been the result. So, when the question was asked last night, and I thought that Vance answered it very well, that, well, you know what? Here's the answer to your climate change. If you think it's being caused by carbon, I mean, first of all, how did you score that debate last night? You and I have been watching these things for a long time. Give me your take. How'd you score it?
Oh, I thought Vance was. Here's the key takeaway is this: Walz's attacks on Donald Trump were lame, recycled nonsense. Just, oh, he's going to talk about crowd size. Wasn't getting anywhere. And Vance was a master, just kept pounding the real target, Kamala Harris. He handled the climate change question well. He handled the media very expertly. He was a master debater. My only criticism of him would be just some of the framing. I think, had even on climate, he could have said, the Biden administration has spent X amount of dollars. We've mandated this. They banned this. They're going after pizza ovens and gas-powered stoves. They banned gas-powered cars. They want to have censorship. And he said, and you know what? The weather's not going to notice. And you're not going to be able to stop a hurricane by whatever the Biden, Kamala Harris or Biden or Walz. He would have been funny if he had reframed it like that. So but that's different. I mean, what I wish he had said. But I thought he did very well. I thought he won that debate. I thought Walz, first of all, just physically, he just it almost looks like my son thought for a second. My 14-year-old son looked up and thought it was Joe Biden on the screen, just from far away. He has that look. So I think optically, Vance crushed him as well.
Yeah, I think I call it a masterclass in debate. Hey, you know what? For the first time in forever, Marc, there was actually some substance on the policy question. I'll give Walz. I'll give Walz credit. He actually, I think him and Vance went toe to toe, and I think Vance won most of the philosophical and political arguments. But I thought that there was actual substance. I hadn't seen substance like that since 1984, since Reagan and Mondale. If you go back, and you know this because you were around, John McCain and Obama, those weren't debates. Those were infomercials for the Obama campaign. This was the actual. I think the American people that watched that thing last night actually got to see that there is the number one. And Vance made the point, I thought brilliantly. There are substantive differences between two views of how things ought to work, right? And he illustrated that, well, we think this way is better. And I think he won the arguments on we think this way is better. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I absolutely do. No, whether this matters, I don't know. But I think it shows that Donald Trump, this was a great VP pick. In fact, I really don't know who he could have picked better among the other than maybe RFK Jr. I'd be open to hearing arguments about that. But RFK's got a lot of negatives, especially on environmental issues in the past and climate. But he's claiming he's reformed, especially on climate. But in terms of, just Vance and the way he presents himself and his position, even on foreign policy, it would be hard. The other picks that Donald Trump could have picked were mostly, they supported Ukraine, and they're much part of the Uniparty. And I'll mention names, people like Marco Rubio, people like Doug Burgum, who was on the short list for Donald Trump. I think even Senator Scott. Terrible picks. There really wasn't anyone other than J.D. Vance that he could have picked.
I actually wrote this question down, so I'm going to ask Morano this. You and RFK Jr. were mortal enemies in 2014 and 2015. Didn't he show up at one of the, what's the big meeting that happens in Colorado every year? The climate, the one that James Cameron showed up and wouldn't debate Michael Crichton.
Yes, that was no, it wasn't that event. This was actually in New York City. I actually was challenged to a debate, and it was me, Andrew Brietbart, and Fella Mackler, who were going to debate James Cameron at that Colorado debate. This was, I have to think back.
2010, 12?
It was way back. Yeah, I was going to say 11 or 12, 13. Yeah. And he actually said, I'm going to take him out in the street. We'll have a duel. We agreed. I was getting on my flight when the debate was canceled. Apparently, the advisors to Cameron said, do not go debate them. Do not be involved in this. And so they gave me a speaking slot, and by which I was prominently, rudely interrupted. And then this is a true story. I don't think I've ever told this on the radio before. James Cameron's PR agent took me out to a restaurant afterward. And there was all these people from the event there, and they posed me with two women who I thought it was a photo op. Never met them before. Was in the restaurant, and they took two pictures, and we didn't take that again. And I wasn't paying attention. And then later, the next day, they sent, this is James Cameron, I can't say his publicity agent, but the publicity agent from the event who helped him, sent me a photo, and the women were posing provocatively. They were fully clothed and everything, but they were doing this weird thing, and he's like, you wouldn't want anyone to see this photo, would you? I don't want you to write your story. I was going to write a story about how James Cameron, and I just laughed about it, and of course wrote the story, and I never saw the picture again. But that's the kind of tactics that the left uses. I mean, that's the kind of, and you'll find out that's a lot more common than you think, because I sent that photo around to everyone I knew and said, can you believe this happened? But anyway, I got distracted. RFK Jr. I interviewed in 2014 at the New York City Climate March. He actually wanted to jail CEOs of energy companies for creating the climate crisis. He wanted to punish politicians who viewed a dissenting voice. That video went viral, so much so that in 2023, he's announced he's running for president. His campaign reaches out to me once the unedited video, which I've then provided for him. I've had very friendly relations since then. And the key to this whole thing is he has now renounced that. In an interview, he said he should never have said that. He didn't apologize, but he said, is this rhetorical flourish, he claims. But he now has the correct position on climate. Climate has been hijacked by the World Economic Forum and the UN. He will not talk about climate during the campaign. It's being used for totalitarian control of society. Bingo.
Let me ask you, do you think his buddy Michael Schellenberger has something to do with this change of heart?
I do. I think because it's related to the whole, everything changed with COVID.
Right.
I mean, you can go back. I found posts from May of 2020. I think it was May, where RFK is talking about Facebook allowing climate misinformation on the site. And then he sort of goes silent, and he reappears that fall, and he's railing about censorship, and he's railing about lockdowns and mask mandates and the vaccine that's coming. So he went through a whole red pilling somewhere in the spring of 2020 and emerged a completely different person. And he talks about that transition. It's amazing. And I wrote publicly in 2020 fall, all is forgiven. And I showed the clip of him saying he wanted to basically jail me. And I said, all is forgiven because of your stance against the Great Reset and COVID and lockdowns and the World Health and Anthony Fauci. And I meant it. And that's why I've had very friendly relations with him since. And his campaign has been back and forth. So it's been very nice. And I actually like him a lot. And I would love to see him in the Trump administration on either the CDC, the FDA, or something to deal with free speech and fighting the National Security Agency.
You know, I was at Marc Morano, ClimateDepot.com on our Dude Maker hotline, and he is actually he's on the Skype Maker hotline, Climate Depot founder and author of The Climate Hustle. And how many movies you got out now? 2?
2 movies, 3 books. Star of stage, screen, and television. Actually, I'm not a star. I've never been on the stage that I can think of. I mean, unless you can count a speaking event as not being on stage. So we'll say star of stage, screen, and television.
Okay. 2 minutes left. So final question to you.
Oh, sorry. We never even got to talk about hurricanes. But enough. Go ahead. Sorry
no, we got the hurricane thing. Final question to you, though. And I guess this kind of has to do with the way the question was answered last night. You talked to a lot of people, and I'm sure you're in contact with a lot of people that are in the energy industry. Is there a slight reversal? Are we reversing the destructive and I think just destructive is the right word. The destructive course that was launched in the late 70s with the China syndrome and all that. Have we finally turned the corner and are warming back now? Because Walz even mentioned nuclear power last night to nuclear power.
Yes, and I think it goes back to what I opened the show with. Almost exclusively, this latest round. What I mean by latest, now it's been being rehabilitated for years. People like James Hanson, who was a big climate alarmist, the one in 1988, he came out pro-nuclear. So and he got himself, and he also called the Green New Deal a fraud. So a lot of the major climate activists are realizing nuclear is a big deal. People like James Lovelock, the guru of Gaia Earth theory, was pro-nuclear. And of course, he died, I think, last year at age 101, but another major figure. But the key to recent developments is AI. And this is done in the mainstream media. It's done the billionaire class. As I mentioned, Bill Gates buying 3 Mile Island to turn it into an AI-powered nuclear plant. That's how important this is, and they realize they can't get away with it. Even Japan, who had the big Fukushima
reactor,
incident,
right?
Yeah, reactor went and they said, we're going to ban nuclear. It turned out it was a disaster. They're now going back to nuclear, and of course France has led the way. So I think what's happening now is it's becoming acceptable even for the hardcore greenies to talk pro-nuclear. Now, I don't know if RFK actually has come around on that issue yet, but we shall see. But nuclear, it's incredible. If you actually believe in global warming and you want to blame someone for global warming, blame Jane Fonda and the China Syndrome 1979 movie. That turned us so against nuclear that we never, that it created all the emissions that are allegedly causing the climate emergency.
That's
so
right.
don't blame the energy CEOs or climate skeptics or Donald Trump. Blame Jane Fonda, the major climate activist, because it was her film that scared the hell out of everyone about nuclear power, which is the future regardless, because it's just so clean, efficient, low, and simple to do compared to everything else. And that's, hopefully this is the watershed moment we've been looking for.
All right, Marc, I got to let you go. Thank you for coming
Thanks a
on.
lot, Mike.
Thanks for coming on at such late notice, brother. God bless you.
All right, appreciate it.
Okay, man. Marc Morano, everybody. ClimateDepot.com, ClimateDepot.com.